People have joined. Welcome to today's session. Very quickly, before we start, as I always say, I will be using chat throughout. So if you do have any questions or any thoughts or anything, please pop them into the chat. If you don't know where that is on your Zoom meeting, should I put the bottom of the screen or the top of the screen? Depends how you have Zoom set up. You'll see a speech bubble with the word chat underneath it. If you click on there, that will open the chat box and then you can send messages in there. So I will be looking at the chat constantly throughout the session. I can also see all your names, so if anyone puts their hand up or anything like that, I can see if you need me to come across to you. Now, today's session is all around cybersecurity in the care setting. Now, if you have been on any of my cybersecurity or any of my previous sessions, this one's very similar to those cybersecurity ones in that I use that same presentation format because it pulls out those same key elements of cybersecurity, fraud, scams, and what to look for. But we're obviously relating to the care setting and what you need to be aware of and alert of. Now, like with all sessions, always start off quickly by defining what is cybercrime. So cybercrime, really simply defined, is criminal activities that are carried out by means of computers or the internet. And I'm a huge believer in that to protect ourselves from these cyber criminals, to protect ourselves, our colleagues, residents in care, family, friends, whoever it might be, we really need to understand what it is and what we're looking for. We also need to understand the threat of cybercrime. So I will use some stories throughout, and they can seem quite scary. But again, don't worry, I'm here to equip you, and it is quite simple to evade these attacks and also protect yourself, your organization, friends, family, whoever it might be. Now, why is it such an issue? Well, we all know with the advancement of technology, the digital age has made it far easier for cybercriminals to steal personal information and compromise companies' security remotely. So if that's a care home or an organization you work for, whoever it might be, again, it can be anyone. It's made it much easier for cybercriminals to compromise really infiltrate all areas remotely. We've seen a huge increase in digital dependence. So especially since the pandemic, there was a huge shift forward. So there were studies that were done and they pushed forward statistics. For instance, it's often stated that businesses as a whole shifted forward their digital business plans by 7 years. So technically, in the business environment or organizational workplace environment, we are 7 years ahead of where we would have been if it wasn't for the pandemic. And the reason for that is we saw a sudden need for huge portions of the population to operate online. Again, huge portions of the population being at home, needing technology to stay connected to people, loved ones. And so there was this huge digital adoption, lots of investment into technology and services. And we've seen that huge shift forward. Now, I put some stats on the screen just very quickly. These were taken by the Cabinet Office, and these are for the UK. And it's just showcasing the impact that cybercrime has had in 2023. So on the screen here, so it cost, and again, these are all in the billions. So cybercrime cost 9.2 billion in lost intellectual property, cost UK business 21 billion pounds, and then the cost of the UK as a whole, it was around 27 billion pounds. And these are just reported incidents. And it is worth noting that a huge portion, and in some cases, depending on what crime is committed, the majority aren't actually reported. And just some additional stats here. So this is just for 2024. That 76% of large organizations and 36% of small organizations experienced cyber attacks in the UK in early 2024. So that's just early 2024. The first quarter we're looking at there, 76% of large organizations experienced a cyber attack. 36% are small. And again, those are ones that were picked up. Those are the ones that were reported. 86% of those attacks are motivated by financial gain. And then it often takes, and this is the really, this is the figure that often scares quite a lot of people when we're looking for cybercrime, and why it's often easily missed and not reported, is that it takes 181 days for companies in the UK to actually identify a data breach. So that's on average 181 days before they even detect that their data has been breached. And another 75 days on average to actually contain the problem. So you're getting close to a year in there just to identify and get on top of it. And that's average for the reported cases. We know from my experience of working, I used to work in banking, I used to work quite closely with fraud department. I know from experience it sometimes takes years to detect. And that's why it can be so hard to actually find the root cause and how it happened. And quite often I would have people come to me and they would really be stumped saying, I have no idea how this happened. I keep everything safe. And it wasn't necessarily that it happened in the last day, week, month. It could have happened years ago. And we'll get into that in more detail. So just some statistics there just to show you obviously the impact it's having. And when we're looking in the care setting, obviously in an organizational standpoint, we are all susceptible to cybercrime. All of us, any of us that are using computers, internet, phones, whatever it might be, residents in care, patients in care who might be using technology, we are all susceptible to this happening. Any of us can be a victim to this. Now, when we look at cybercrime specifically, there are three main risks that have been identified. And these are, I've put them on the screen. So phishing, again, strange word there, phishing, but it relates to fraudulent emails or messages that appear to be from a reputable source. So just all of you on here thinking back, you've probably all experienced this. How many of us have had an email come through, looks legitimate, but there's some strange pieces to it, a few red flags popping up. They're pretending to be someone else. They've put a link in there. They've told you to click the link or phone them. And again, this is phishing. So it's fraudulent emails that are coming through, trying to catch people into clicking on those links. And they can be targeted and they can be untargeted. So targeted, they could be a cyber criminal who has spent time harvesting data from somebody or an organization before they launch the attack. And they're targeting to an individual or an organization. And then there could be a non-targeted where they simply just send it out to tens of thousands of people at once and hope that anyone catches the bait. And again, there's a similar thing to phishing, and that's smishing. That's text message fraud. Again, we're probably all familiar with getting text messages saying that we've missed a parcel, we need to pay a small fee to redirect it. And again, that is a smishing attack, and it's not targeted. They just sent that to thousands of people at once, hoping that people will take the bait. And once enough people rack up, they'll make a good amount of money out of it and then move on. We've got malicious software. So malicious software, also known as malware, it is any software intentionally designed to cause damage to a computer server, client, or computer network. And again, we'll get into detail in malware a bit later on in this session. And then finally, impersonation fraud. That is pretending to be another person or entity in order to deceive others. And that can be a very broad subject, and we're specifically looking at care. There are a number of ways in which this can be done. Again, we'll dive into that as we go through. So again, I believe it's very important to actually understand how these cyber criminals are operating before we get into how to actually protect ourselves, because we need to know what to protect ourselves from. We need to know what to look out for. So how does a cyber criminal actually launch their attack? Gov.uk have broken this down into 4 stages, which I've put on the screen here. So stage 1 is the survey stage, and that refers to the reconnaissance phase of a cyber attack. So basically, you get a cyber criminal, they will identify a target. So it could be a person, it could be an employee, it could be an organization, it could be you, it could be any of us. So they've identified their target. And now they'll go through a stage of starting to gather information on that person, organization, to understand the vulnerabilities and the weak points. Now, again, that can take a substantial amount of time, and there are a number of ways in which that can be done. I'll give you a really overlooked way that can be done. So, again, not to scare anyone, but one of the ways that we saw cyber criminals were able to survey people quite easily, get quite a substantial amount of information, including answers you usually use in security questions, were through social media. And an example of this is, say one day you're on Facebook, you're scrolling through your home feed, you see a picture, and that picture says, it's just a picture of an animal, and it just says, the question on the picture says, what was the name of your first pet? Cute picture. You look at the comments, hundreds of thousands of people are usually commenting in here. Now, that straight away is a classic security question. It's also something that criminals can source data on you. And so you've got hundreds of thousands of people just sharing this information publicly. You don't know who's harvesting that data. Now, another one, again, you might be on social media, you might be on a website, you see a questionnaire or a survey. And again, it can be something quite funny. What superhero are you? So you click on it, you start answering all these questions, you're filling in personal details, where you're from, when your birthday is, what you're like, this, that, and the other. And you've sent all this information. It tells you what superhero you are. Great. People often share that kind of thing. Again, who are you giving that information from? And there's a lot of these ways that these cyber criminals will use to harvest data. And quite often, they will buy that information from people who are putting those surveys up. Again, there's lots of surveys and questionnaires online as well, which, again, they might be for prize winnings, whatever it might be. They never actually deliver a prize. They're just there to harvest information from you. So lots of different ways in which they can do that. So again, that first stage is identifying a target, harvesting the information. Stage 2 is the deliver stage. So this stage is in the cyber attack is where the attacker delivers malicious code or something called a payload to a target system. And that can be, again, through email, like we looked at a moment ago, phishing, downloads, or even physical media. So that is the deliver stage. They will then send the attack. And again, if it's a targeted attack, it might be a personalized website that's something someone is currently interacting with at the time. Maybe someone's making a large purchase. Maybe they're buying a car, a home, and so they'll pretend to be the agent who is selling that. They'll make a website that looks like it, and they'll send an email pretending to be this person to get them to click a link and steal information. Stage 3 is the breach stage. So a breach occurs when an unauthorized individual gains access to a system or network. So for instance, they've surveyed you, they've delivered the attack, the person has clicked a link, filled in information, they've been breached. Now they will access the system or network, and that can lead to theft of sensitive data, disruption of services, installation of malware, and then that finally ties in with stage 4, the effect. So what effect is it having on the victim? And it can be wide-ranging, including financial loss, data theft, reputational damage, psychological harm. And the impact can also extend to the broader economy and society. And the effect doesn't have to happen right away, as I've said. Often the criminal will sit and wait for the right time. That's why it can take months or years to actually launch the attack, which makes it incredibly hard to trace back once it's happened. And as I said before, remembering that average figure we said, for UK organizations, on average, 181 days to actually identify a data breach. And that's stage 3, 181 days to even identify stage 3. So tying in with that, cyber criminals, they will use psychology to launch attacks. And again, I am a huge believer that in understanding, if we can understand the psychological tactics these criminals use, I think most of us can feel safe operating online and have the confidence to support others and protect them. And again, especially when we're looking in the care setting again, it could be for the organization as a whole. It could be employees there, your colleagues, or the residents. This is a good piece to understand how these cyber criminals are operating and how they're attacking various people, because they'll use those same psychological tactics to launch their attacks. And these are greed, urgency, authority, and fear. So again, touching on some of the things that we've looked at a moment ago, greed. How many of us like to win something? We might see a limited time offer. We might see fill this in to win this prize, get free tickets to this. Again, whatever it might be, we click on it, we fill in all of our information. They've just stolen a bunch of our information. Who do we know? How do we know that the person we send that information to is who they say they are? And can we trust them with that personal information? Is there anything that will link back to any of our systems? And then that touches on urgency. So again, as I said a moment ago, there's limited time offers, only 3 left, only 1 left, do it today. Cyber criminals will often use urgent language. So again, even if it's a text message, if it's a email, you might get emails saying this has to be done now. And tying in with urgency, we have fear. And you'll find these two often are linked together, especially in those text messages, especially in those emails and those phone calls when the criminals are trying to target us. They will use a lot of fear and urgency. They'll say, you're at risk of this. If you don't do this now, there's going to be a consequence. If you don't do this now, you will be involved in criminal activity and the police will come. A classic one I see is, and again, this text message went out to tens of thousands of people, pretending to be from HMRC, saying you have evaded tax in a certain area. If you don't pay it today, the police will be contacted. So right there is urgency and fear. And again, how many of us have had someone phone us up pretending to be someone of authority? And then using that urgency and fear. We see that a lot, that authority piece, where they will pretend to be police, banking. It can be anybody in a position of authority who has access to details, your information, and they'll pretend to be these people to lure you in. So again, there are psychological principles we need to look for: greed, urgency, authority, and fear. And I'll give you all a story which I saw, and this was working in the bank. And it's one that we see time and time again, especially on people who are vulnerable and lonely. And that is using those authority pieces to get people to give away large sums of money. So I used to work in banking, and I had a quite a vulnerable, lonely, elderly lady who would come in quite often. Knew her for quite a long time. And there was just one day she came in, she seemed quite off, wasn't her usual self at all. It was blatantly obvious to someone who knew this lady. And I took this lady to the side and I remember saying to her, is everything okay? And it took a bit of umming and ahhing, but finally got it out of her. She took me into a room and she very quietly said to me, firstly, she mouthed they're listening, and I didn't really understand what she was saying at the time. And then she said, haven't you heard? And I said, heard what? And she said, the investigation that's going on against the bank manager. And I said, no, I haven't heard anything. What's this? And she said, well, I've been in contact with the police for the last few months. They've been telling me that your bank manager's been stealing money from our accounts, from customer accounts. And so the police have said what we need to do is we need to withdraw money from her account and give it to the police, who will then put it into a safe account. And then when they've gathered enough information, they'll arrest the manager. Now, none of that makes any sense to somebody who would understand banking. Obviously, if anything like that ever did happen, you are fully covered for money that's stolen. But this lady didn't know this. These people had pretended to be the police. She was very lonely, so they built rapport with her over months, weeks. They'd actually been visiting her house dressed as police officers, coming to her house, talking with her, having cups of tea. And they'd been doing this for months. And at this point, they'd told her to come into the bank. They'd basically told her to phone us. She'd put a phone in her bag so they could hear everything. Um, and so she was going to withdraw her money, go back home, hand them the money. They would steal it. And she'd come in to withdraw quite a substantial amount of money. And she'd actually been going around different banks in the local area, withdrawing large sums of money. And again, that's just an example of the authority piece. Now, they were caught. We managed to get real police involved. They actually went to her house, and the group were actually at the house at the time. They were arrested. But this is just one example of how it works. You'll get these people target people who are lonely, vulnerable. They'll pretend to be someone in authority. They'll build rapport. They'll pretend to be their friends. They'll gain that trust, and then they'll launch their attacks. And again, especially, I've seen this many, many times, again, with vulnerable, lonely people, those that we may be caring for, and especially thinking of the care setting. Romance scams, another huge one, where you'll get lonely people targeted by people online who will claim to be someone they're not. They'll form this whole online relationship with them, and then they'll get the lonely, vulnerable person to start sending money. So we need to look for these warning signs. We need to look for changes in behavior, and we need to look for any of these psychological tactics that are being used. Now, I'm just going to flash something up on the screen very quickly. I just want everyone to read it very quick, and then I'll move on. So I'm just going to put on the screen right now, if it will let me. So I'll just do it again very quickly. Okay, so we all read that. Again, some of you might have clocked it straight away. I'm just going to go back. There was something which you needed to look out for. And if you read it very slowly, I love Paris in the springtime. Now, again, some of you might have caught that instantly, but often when we just read something like that, our brain will fill in the blanks, and we didn't notice the use of the word "the" twice. So on first glance, it looked normal. Now, often our brain will be our own worst enemy. It will act against us, and it will just fill in pieces of information. So when we read something on first glance, we'll often fill in any grammatical errors, any spelling mistakes, any overuse of words. And as a result, we can miss crucial pieces of information. And again, this is one of the ways that cyber criminals operate. They will act on these weaknesses that we all have. And especially by using fear and urgency, what they're trying to do is they're trying to put our brain into a fight or flight response. So there are two main parts of the brain. We have that fast fight or flight, quick decision-making part of our brain, just acts out of fear, necessity, speed, survival. Again, fight or flight, it will just act. And then we have that slower, more logical part of the brain. Again, the part that often makes us, well, the part that makes us human. That part of the brain where we can logically think. And when we actually slow down and take the time to actually review information, we make more logical decisions. And more times than not, I've seen people fall victims to cybercrime and the psychological tactics used by cyber criminals because they are just acting. They get into a state of fear. They need to be urgent, and so they don't slow down and they don't review information. And as a result, they will just dismiss any problems and they'll just go straight into making a rash decision. And only afterwards they suddenly realize what they've done, and it's too late at that point. So one of the biggest things we can all do is be suspicious of everything. Slow down, take a step back, analyze everything. And a really good tip here, if you ever get an email or a text message and there's some red flags, just read it out loud. So read what is on your page out loud. So if I was to read this out loud, straight away, I'd realize it doesn't actually grammatically make any sense. And lots and lots of times I've seen people come to me and they've read their text messages, their emails out loud, and they keep stopping because the grammar's so bad. And they realize that if it was from a reputable source, it wouldn't be that grammatically inaccurate. And so again, that's a big warning sign there. So I want to explore, again, the ways in which these cyber criminals operate. So looking at social engineering, and we've already discussed a couple of these already. So we have phishing, we got phishing, and we have smishing. So we looked at the email attack before. So again, you might get an email targeting you with various links, targeting the organization, targeting someone in your care. And they may go ahead and click on the information, click on the link. Before they know it, they've downloaded something to their device, or they've gone and given away lots of information because they've been too trusting, or they've read an email which has come through fearful, urgent, getting them to do something because it's put them in that fearful state. Now, phishing, that is phone, that's phone fraud. So again, you might physically get someone phone you up and they're trying to get some information out of you. Now, more times than not, the phishing attacks, they will use a few different scams here. So sometimes they'll do ransomware scams, or they'll phone someone up. Again, seen these many times, people who aren't too confident with technology. Again, lonely, vulnerable, they'll build rapport with these people. They'll then tell them there are problems with their computer or their smartphone or whatever it might be. And they go onto their smartphone, or their computer, they download some malware, which then locks everything. And they say to the victim, you need to pay me quite a substantial fee. Otherwise, I won't take this off. And I have access to everything. And they'll scare them into that. Another way in which this we've seen phishing attacks is they're often phoning up asking for codes to get into banking, maybe pretend to be the bank, asking for a code to check your accounts, one-time passcode. So again, they might you might get a text message or an email to your phone with a code, and they'll ask for that code. And we'll touch on that a bit later on. Those are codes which you are not meant to give to anyone. And later on in this session, I'll explain that in more detail. And then finally, we have smishing. So that's the tech scams, which we touched on again. Now, as I said, one thing that, again, I'm very confident would protect all of us is to slow down and start analyzing everything we're presented with. And this is something you can share with your colleagues, or again, people in your care, to really explain that if we just slow down and analyze things, we're going to find red flags. So for instance, say we get an email pretending to be from, let's just say the bank in this case. And it could be a resident. They get an email from the bank. First thing to look at would be the email address. Now, if it is from the bank, the email address would look quite legitimate. It would have the bank name in it. And often these scam emails are just made up emails. They will consist of just loads of jumbled up characters, numbers, letters. And they won't make any sense. There'll be no mention of the bank or organization in there. Now, that is one big red flag. If it's like that, it's likely to be fake. Delete it, block them, ignore it. Now, say the email address does look legitimate. Next thing we need to do is, who is the email addressing? So if the email is just saying, dear valued customer or dear customer, again, that is a red flag, or could be considered a red flag, because again, if you are banking with these people, you're doing your banking with them, you've got your finances, they're likely to send an email addressing you, your name. Now, again, I wouldn't go entirely just off of this, because you could get an email directly addressing you, and it can be a targeted attack where the criminals have sourced the information from you, so they know it's you. They might email the organization, they might email the resident or patient, they might email yourself. They've put your name in there. That might be a target attack. So we need to look for more red flags here. So email address looks legit. They've addressed me in the email. Okay, that's looking okay. Let's move on to the next thing. Read the email out loud. Check the grammar, check the spelling mistakes. If it is from a reputable company, I can only speak on behalf of working in banking where I used to work. I know a team would actually check emails before they were distributed to customers. They would check the templates, so there would be no grammatical spelling errors or mistakes in there. And again, that is a big red flag if you're seeing grammar or errors in there. So do check that. Now, again, it might, again, look legitimate there. So next thing we need to look for are links. So are they telling us to click on a link? Are they using urgent and fearful language? Is it your account has been locked? Click on this link in the next hour to unlock your account. Again, fearful state. You never know, the person in your care might then click on the link because they're scared their finances are being locked. And before you know it, they've gone through and they've given away all their information or access to banking, all their details, in which then they'll get a call back from the scammer pretending to be the bank, who will then try and get codes to actually log into their banking. So that's one way they can do it. So if there are links in there telling you to click on links to do something, that is a huge red flag. These companies, reputable companies, will often always, in most cases, never get you to click on links. Instead, they will tell you to make the proactive contact yourself. So they'll tell you to go to the website and find the website yourself, or phone them yourself, finding the number yourself. They'll make you make the proactive contact to look for the contact information rather than getting you to click on links or ring phone numbers. And that's, again, a huge tip here for everyone in the session. And this is something you can pass on to anyone that you come into contact with, make the proactive contact. If you're worried that an email, a phone call, a text message is fake or a scam, close it down, delete it, remove it, go online, look for the phone number and the email address yourself, or the website yourself, and you contact them with the details you have found, not the details they've given you in these emails. And in most cases, you'll find it was a scam. In some cases, it might not have been a scam and it was genuine, but at least you made that proactive step, and now you can go ahead in confidence you're speaking to the right person. So again, I've just included some more tips to keep you safe on here. So this goes to anybody. So never reveal personal or financial data. Be suspicious of everything. And this is something you can tell anyone in care, especially vulnerable, lonely people, especially people who aren't digitally savvy. Just be suspicious of everything. It's better to be like that than not. It's better to be like that than be too trusting and give access, get lured into a scam. As we know, these fraudulent activities, they can go on for years. And again, it can be very hard to track. And they're very good at building rapport with people and luring them in. Do not allow remote access of your computer. So again, if you get someone phone you up, if you get an email, clicking on it and it's telling you to download maybe TeamViewer, and they're trying to access your computer, don't give access to your computer to these people. Again, close it down. You go find the details yourself. Again, if it's HMRC, go onto the HMRC website yourself, go to the contact us section and contact them yourself. If it's the bank, go onto contact us, contact them yourself. Don't click the links, don't use the numbers they've given you. So that goes on to the next point. Slow down, think before you click. Again, we need to get ourselves out of that reactionary part of thinking, and we need to analyze everything. Slow down, think before we click. Even if they've harvested information on you, if they're launching that attack phase, we should be okay if we're looking out for how they're trying to launch it. And by slowing down and analyzing, we can often stop most of these attacks from finishing. And then finally, report it. By reporting it, it helps in combating the issue. And I'll get on to later how we can actually report cybercrime. But when more people report, the more we can combat. And I'll give an example. I touched on the person who sent out all the text messages pretending to be the Royal Mail earlier on, getting people to pay small fees for re-delivery. So many people reported that person was actually caught. He was a student at a university. He was arrested, and that was because enough people were reporting him. And again, because managed to get that lady to open up to me in confidence, again, technically reporting, we were then able to get the police to intervene and shut it down. So next, impersonation fraud, and we see impersonation fraud take a whole list of different methods. Now, this can be identity fraud. So pretending to be you, they could steal information and then go ahead and try and access systems on your behalf. Again, if people are too trusting and give away too much information, then these scammers, these criminals will go on and pretend to be these people. I've seen this in person myself, where somebody went into a bank, an elderly lady again, and she gave a whole story about how her daughter had just given birth at the local hospital, and there was a hospital literally just on the same road. And she'd just quickly taken the bus over. She didn't have her cards or anything on her because she'd quickly left the house because it was an emergency birth. She gave this whole sob story. She needs to look after the other kids. She's really stuck. It seemed very genuine. So the bank then had a whole method to go through with her. They started taking on asking her security questions, which she answered all of them, got her to sign pieces of paper. Her signature matched the system. Once they were confident with everything, they gave her the amount of money which you could take out based on that. Obviously, you can't take out huge sums of money. Turns out it was a scam. It wasn't actually that person. And they had actually stolen the identity of somebody else. And I don't know the ins and outs how they've done it, but they could have done it for years. They might have known the person, practiced their signature over and over again, learned all of their security questions, literally covered everything. And then with that information, they were able to just go into a bank, pretend to be that person with this story, and steal money. And they probably would go around to lots of different banks and just keep withdrawing money that way. And that's one example. And again, that just shows that data harvesting phase. And that's why it's so important that people aren't just willingly giving out information. And that's where you need to step in, especially with people in your care, people who are vulnerable, even employees, that they aren't just willingly giving away information. Tech support scams. So again, you might get people phoning up, pretending to be tech support, and they tell you there's errors on the computer or systems, and they actually download malware onto your computer and they cause the problem, and then they hold your system to ransom. Again, we got phishing attacks, so pretending to be somebody else. So the most extreme one of these I've ever seen. I actually didn't see it. I heard about it. It was in that banking. We'd all heard about it. Was a case where somebody was doing a large house purchase. So it was over £1 million that they were paying off of this house. And so that was the payment they were making. And they had the bank details from an email that they received to make the payment. And they were absolutely adamant that they were the details, and they were like, this is my money. I'm sending that money. I need to send it today. Because again, these people have pretended to be the agent. They had built that rapport with the customer over a long time. And he didn't realize he was a victim. And so after the bank went through all of the stages, they spent all day going through this, warning him of the likelihood, telling this person to make phone calls. The person would not budge. And unfortunately, in that case, it is their money. They are allowed to do what they want once you've exhausted all areas. The money was sent, and then it was highlighted some time later that the money was never received by the agent. And what happened is a pretend email and website had been created that looked exactly like the real one. These people had come in pretending to be the organization, and they basically got him to send money to this fake place. And so he lost that money. Again, that's an extreme example, but it's why you need to be diligent. Don't be trusting of anything, especially if people are vulnerable, especially if they're lonely. These rapport attacks will happen more than you would like to think. We got romance scams. Again, I've touched on that already. Medical identity theft. So we've seen this one as well. So stealing the identity of someone to get access to medications. That is one that we've often seen. And then you got invoice fraud and CEO fraud. Now, from an organizational standpoint, I have put these on because if you are working out of a care home or for a care organization, these do happen. It's important just to highlight them. So invoice fraud is where the use of fake, altered, duplicate invoices are made to deceive an organization into paying for goods or services that are never delivered. Or simply as a means to siphon money from the company. So you may get fake invoices sent through. Again, just like with that gentleman making the house purchase, you need to check those details are correct for invoices. If you are unsure, if there are red flags, you need to contact the person yourself. So make that proactive contact yourself and just check with them if it is legitimate before you send any money anywhere. CEO fraud. So this is known when a scammer impersonates a company executive or a senior employee. It doesn't just have to be the CEO. It can be anyone in a senior position. And they do that to trick other employees into transferring money or sensitive information. And again, when we're looking in the care setting, you need to be aware of who is contacting employees, who is contacting residents, patients, whoever it might be, pretending to be someone in a senior position of care, because it has happened and it does happen. And again, when people are too trusting, they will just give that information away. So it's one to just highlight. And again, the way to combat that is to make that proactive contact yourself. I'll say that over and over again. If you're unsure, if it sounds a bit dodgy, just hang up, delete the email, you go contact the right person yourself from the details you've sourced. So how can you prevent that impersonation fraud? I just touched on some there. So obviously verify anyone new, anyone you're making new payments to, very important. Double check details, regular audits as well, very important, and obviously educating employees. So again, we're looking at organizations you work for. If you are involved in the admin side of things, educating employees is very important. By educating employees, we can also educate those in our care as well. So again, huge importance. This doesn't just fall down to one area. All of us, no matter what position we work in, no matter who we are, even outside of work, we can all fall victim to this scam and all scams. So by education, I believe we can stop the attacks actually fulfilling, even if they have our details, our information. If we know what we're looking for, if we know those red flags, they're not going to be able to get in. So again, I've got some information on screen, and I've touched on these again. I'll touch on these in a bit of detail in a moment. But we got malware, Trojans, and ransomware. These are different ways, again, in which certain attacks are launched. So I will go through malware in detail in a moment. But again, we've got Trojans. So linking to malware, they could be a fake piece of software which you click on, comes onto our computer, and before you know it, it then downloads some virus onto the computer, spyware, worms, any of these things that I got at the bottom of the screen, it can download onto your computer and then start harvesting information or locking parts of your system. So we need to be aware of those. And I've touched on ransomware several times about how criminals often use malware to lock your computer. So again, malware is malicious software, and it's something that's downloaded or put onto your computer. It could be a file. It can be through clicking an email and downloading. It could be clicking on a download link. Again, just doing this can download these Trojans, ransomware, viruses, whatever it might be, onto your computer. And from there, these criminals have a whole range of different methods to then actually start data breaching and stealing information. So how do we protect ourselves from all of these? So a few ways, and again, a lot of these fall into DSPT, Data Protection Security Toolkit. Just said that the wrong way around, but you know what I mean. So a lot of these fall into the DSPT. And again, if you use that or you've worked for that to get NHS mail, proxy ordering, or any IT systems in there, you'll be familiar with this. But you will have to comply with some of these on here. And just one thing here, if anyone is struggling with DSPT and you do need help, we do offer free support there as well. So you can reach out to us. So firstly, keep your systems updated. If any of us see any of those system updates pop up on our phones or our computers, don't just ignore them. By updating them, it protects us from the latest attacks. So what I mean by that is technology is moving so fast, it's advancing so fast that yes, we have the latest software in place today, and your computer's great, and it might then suddenly tell you software update. That's because it's protecting you from the latest attacks. And if you don't do that and you do get an attack on your computer, it might be quite easy for that attack to get through. So every time you get those system updates, do them. Use firewalls or network security tools. So again, you can do your research on those, just have a look. Secure your email, and I'll get into more detail on that as we go through. So in your security settings, you can secure your email. Backup data regularly. What I mean by that is creating a copy. So if you do have your systems locked, you have a backed up copy of all of your systems, all your information, so you can continue operating as normal. Again, that's a huge one in the DSPT. Implement device controls, regular security audits. It's important. Everyone can sit there and say, yep, my systems are secure, especially in the care setting. If we're all using our own computers, laptops, wherever it might be, we all could sit there and say, oh yeah, it's all safe. Is it really that safe? Having an audit in place, a regular audit to actually check the systems are secure, very important, and it could reduce huge risk. Creation of an incident response plan. So what do we do if something does happen? Having a plan in place will save huge amounts of time. Now, antivirus systems you can have on there. These will sift through. They will stop viruses or remove viruses off of your computer. If any of you are in this call right now and you're worried about anything you might have clicked on in the past, you might be worried that you have something on your computer, you can go ahead, download antivirus software. Some of them you have to pay for, some are free. Do your research on those. Just have to download it on your computer, run a scan, and it will then check if anything is on there that shouldn't be, and it will delete it for you. Multi-factor authentication and password policy. So implement policies that require the use of strong, unique passwords. And the reason for that, again, we'll touch on that in a bit of detail. It isn't just someone sitting there trying to guess your password. More often than not, they are using systems that will sift through tens of thousands of passwords a second. And that's why it's more important than ever that you have a very strong password, because if it's very simple, it can be linked straight back to you through a bit of data harvesting. That system will detect that password in a split second. And then there's multi-factor authentication. That's if the cyber criminals have your password, they won't be able to get in because they have to go through that additional step. And that's something that only you have control of. And usually it's a text message to your phone or a code to an authenticator app or an email. And then education, huge piece here. Human error is significant in all of this. In malware infections, providing training sessions, educating employees, educating residents, patients on malware and the risks and what it is. The importance of not downloading or opening attachments from unknown sources will go very far and protect so many people. So again, part of DSPT, it highlights risks of public Wi-Fi, and so I put it into this cybersecurity session as well, because public Wi-Fi does carry risks and it does impact all of us. Now, the risks are, it's public, you could be on a fake network, and also you don't know the site security controls. So I will give an example. You might go into a coffee shop, for instance, one day, and you have your work computer, you have your work phone, you need to access your work system. So you see in that coffee shop, there are two Wi-Fis under the name of the coffee shop. So it's 50-50. You just click on one of them, you log into your work system, you do all your bits, you go home. Few weeks, months later, you find that the care organization has had a data breach. Now, what you didn't know is that somebody had set up a fake Wi-Fi network in the same name as the coffee shop, and they were actually getting people to go onto that fake network, and then they were stealing information, harvesting information. It is a public network. Again, even if you're using the legitimate one as well, the legitimate public Wi-Fi, how do you know what information they are using? Who do you know that's currently on that network as well? So there are big risks there. What I would always suggest is that first you use your private network. So it might be your mobile data, that is a private network for you, using a separate network. But if you can't do that, getting a VPN, also known as a virtual private network, is a really good idea. because what it does is it effectively makes the network private. So it basically hides you and your information. There is still a tiny risk of information being accessed, but it is very small. But if you have that VPN operating, that's the worst case scenario. If you absolutely have to use the public Wi-Fi, have your VPN on first, then go on the public Wi-Fi. It just hides that information. What I always say is if you're not willing to do something in public or share something in public, don't do it on a public Wi-Fi network. And with VPNs, you can do your research. Just do a quick Google search, look into VPNs, check reviews, check which ones are trusted. Some are free, some you have to pay for or subscribe to, but they are very useful in ensuring your network is protected. Having two-factor authentication on there, again, on all of your systems, very important. So again, even if they steal your passwords, they won't be able to get through if they don't have a second factor. And again, strong passwords, very important that you have those on there. So I keep mentioning strong passwords. Now, how do we make a strong password? Well, there is a website which can be very beneficial to you. It's How Secure Is My Password, and I'm just going to go across to that website now just to show you what that looks like. And I'm just going to pop that into the chat as well so you can play around with it. Now, don't put your real passwords in there. Just use it as a template to help you build a password. And a good practice that we can do here is it just shows you how long it would take a computer system to hack your password. So let's use a very common password in here. I'm just going to use the word password, all lowercase. It was actually the most commonly used password last year. That password can be cracked instantly. Okay, fine. Let's just do a pet name. So I'm going to put my pet's name in here. I won't say what it is for security purposes, but let's just put that in there. 7 milliseconds, so not even a second, that password is being hacked. Let's do my name. Sorry, I just did my name there. So that's my name. Can be cracked instantly. And again, it's even faster if they've sourced information on you and they're putting these keywords into a system. And that's why it's so important. Would you let it that your house could be broken into in a second? No. Would you have it that your car could be broken into in a second? No. So why would you do it that your systems or your employee information or your patient's information or those in your care's information can be accessed instantly? That is why we need strong passwords. And a good way to build a strong password, I always say, pick 3 completely random words. So I'm just going to look around my desk. I'm going to pick 3 random words. So I've got a cup there. So let's just do cup. I've got a mouse here, computer mouse. So I'm just going to do mouse. And then I've got a bowl over there as well. So let's just do that. So that's 1 year. Fantastic. Year's good enough. I'm safe. Again, technology is advancing so fast that what is a year today with breakthroughs in technology this time next week, that could be a second again. So we need to make it more layered. So I'm going to put in some capital letters in here. I'm just going to put a capital in the first letter, the second one. Again, you can't see my password on the screen because it's hidden at the minute. But if I just put capital letters in there, it's taking it to 16,000 years. Fantastic. I'm not going to be alive in 16,000 years. That'll do. Again, no. Technology advances, so do the tools available to cyber criminals. So let's make it even more complicated. Let's throw some numbers in there, and then let's throw some random characters in there. So I'll just do an exclamation mark in there, an @ symbol there. 93 trillion years, and then it goes green, this site, if that is a good password for you to use. So again, just a good tool, good resource. It's practice that you can use, especially in an organization standpoint. Getting people to actually use this as practice is very beneficial. Now, I keep saying, what if the cybercriminal has your password? Well, that's where two-factor authentication, also known as multi-factor authentication, comes in very handy. And I just want to finish off touching on this because it is so important. Now, multi-factor authentication, you can have really on any system, although most you have to physically go and turn it on yourself. If there is one system I would tell you to have multi-factor authentication on, it would be your email. And the reason for that is your email is the gateway to all of your passwords. What happens when you forget a password? You click forgot password, it then sends you an email, and then you reset your password. If a cyber criminal has access to your emails, they could effectively go ahead and reset all your passwords. So by having two-factor authentication on there, it might be that you just get a text message sent to your phone. For me, I get a code sent to my phone on an authenticator app. I have to physically have my phone to type in that code. The cyber criminal wouldn't be able to do that. Now, that's where you often see those phishing attacks where they phone you up because they often have the password. They're now trying to get that second step. And so they'll phone you up and they'll say, you've got a text message to your phone, or go in your authenticator app. There's a code, read it to me. Reputable companies will never ask for those codes. You do not give those away. For instance, with online banking, that second step is often your PIN Sentry device. So if you have that PIN, which you put your card in and you get a code, never give that code to anyone. Same as your PIN number, never give that to anyone. Those are technically what you would refer to as second step verification methods. And that is something that you and only you should know. So never give that away to anybody. And to turn it on, you just need to go to your security settings. From there, you'll be able to find it. If you are still having trouble there, if you just do a quick Google search, how do I turn two-factor authentication on, and then put your email, what email system you use, it'll help you and guide you through with that one. So finally, here's some support sites I've used. I can get this presentation sent out to all of you, but we got the National Cybersecurity Centre, very helpful, got loads of resources on there, and Action Fraud. Now, how do you actually report? Well, if I just head across to Action Fraud, this is the Action Fraud website. I'm just going to pop this in here, and this is good practice for all of you. Again, anyone in your care as well, or staff or employees. All you need to do is just go onto the website. Even if you're not sure whether it's a crime or not, it's still worth reporting. They'll investigate it. And in here, you just go to start reporting, and then you would just fill out the details in here, as you can see. And they do have 24/7 cyber reporting in there. So very valuable tool. Please do report the cybercrime. So just as a takeaway, what I always say, even if these cyber criminals have all of your information, they've got your password, but we have second step in place, you're more likely than not going to be safe. I share a lot of what I have online about myself, and I'm very confident still using online because I know what to look for. So if there's anything, I just say stop. If you get any of these attacks, just think about it, slow down your thinking, and then report. And don't act on it in terms of clicking links and doing that. Act on it in terms of reporting, deleting the emails, blocking the phone numbers. So finally, I'm just going to share my email into the chat. So we do offer a lot of additional support. So I support lots with all things digital. Also, we have lots of different sessions available. So do check out our website. So that is the Sussex Digital team, Sussex Digital in Reach team. Just want to spend a minute or so, if I can still hold you here, just something very important that is coming along. And that is just very quickly sharing with you Plexus. So it is a shared care record which is coming, and we are actually looking for 200 care homes to sign up to this. Nada, can I just hand over to you just to quickly take them through briefly on this?
I've just realized I'm muted. So, thank you very much. Yes, shared record. So basically, the Sussex NHS Trust is looking for 200 care homes to implement Plexus to. It is care homes to start with, but it will be expanded to all other care providers in Sussex. So what this means in practice for you is that you will be able to have access to patient information. What you can look at the moment with Plexus. So basically you'll be given a link, you put it in your browser. Obviously you have to go through some IG information governance checklist. You have to have DSPT in place, maybe have some audits, some training, etc. But once you've gone through all that, you'll be able just to log into the system and have a look at basic information on any resident in your care or any person who will be coming to your care. So maybe you have a resident hospital that you are about to assess, and then you can access all sorts of useful information. What you can access at the moment is their basic details, which is just their name, address, telephone number, GP, NHS number, phone, email address. Then you can access the summary, that is the last 3 encounters with their GP, any active problems, any allergies, adverse reaction, acute medications, and any repeat prescriptions. Then you can access information on medications, allergies and adverse reaction, immunization records, and community care plans. Now, community care plans for me is the most exciting bit. So it is not quite developed yet to where we hope it will be, but it will be by the end of August. And that will mean that you will have access to care plans by other community services. So it could be the local authority care plans, or it could be, for example, if you're residency by community physio or diabetes nurse, and you'll be able to read those care plans. At the moment, it is view only, so you can't change anything on the care plans, and also you cannot share your care plans yet on Plexus, but that is coming. It probably won't be done sort of tomorrow, but in time, you will be able to share your care plans on Plexus as well. And another thing that is coming from August, which is also, to me, very exciting, it is hospital discharge summaries and personalized care plans. And I'm not quite sure what personalized care plans, who they're from. Again, once I find more information, I'll share it with you. But definitely hospital discharges, and you can just imagine how useful that would be, how much time you will save. If you are interested in taking part in Plexus, just contact me. You've got my email address. Or I can quickly just put in, I have actually emailed you all with this information, but I can put expression of interest there, link, and then you can just, by expressing an interest, you're not really committing to anything at the moment. So all you are saying, I may be interested in this. Plexus is free, it doesn't cost you anything. And as I said, if you change your mind later and go, no, I just can't do this, that's absolutely fine. All this means it's expression of interest. So any questions about Plexus, do get in touch. That is it from me.
Fantastic.